See, I've been waiting. Waiting on that time. Feel me if you've been waiting on yours. That moment, it's close. It's close. Yeah. Tired of living day to day like everything.
And that moment is now, ladies and gentlemen. We are back on the block, the Fighter's Block, the #1 boxing and MMA podcast in the world. My name is Joe Gilpin, joined as always by my co-host, the host with the most, Mr. Jesse Rivas. How you doing, Jesse?
A little upset. My laptop has completely crashed on me, so I'm a little bit furious and upset. But we're starting off the morning bright. We got a lot of great fights to go to. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm sorry that your laptop is fucking up. Later, we're going to have to give that thing, let's hook it to a heavy bag and just do what feels right, is what I say at this point. We had a wonderful weekend of fights behind us, especially in the boxing world. Looking ahead, we have some decent fights this weekend. We have some fights that I feel like the hardcores could get excited about. But Jesse, the thing I want to talk about before anything else, the ESPN and the UFC have signed a $1.5 billion deal to hold 42 events over the next 5 years. This is a massive deal, Jesse. Am I wrong?
No. This is fantastic. This is huge. And I love the fact that it's not just going to be ESPN, but it's also going to be in the ESPN Plus platform, which when I first heard of the ESPN Plus streaming service, I wasn't excited. I was not excited. I thought that they were hurting Terrence Crawford and a couple of other fights by putting them on the Plus app. But at $4, you get you get exclusive fights, and you also get the UFC. Now we're talking business.
Exactly. This is a game changer for this platform. The ESPN Plus app for fight fans is now a must, right? There's no way you can be a serious hardcore fan without having access to these ESPN fights, because they're going to be putting on major cards. They're going to be putting on major UFC cards. I'm really excited all over. And I'm excited for the media coverage that I know is going to come with this. You feel me?
Absolutely. With such a huge investment by such a huge, MMA and, just sports channel, they're going to invest a lot of money on promoting and covering the fights and telling the story of the fighters and the story of the fights, which I feel like is missing in MMA. I feel like boxing has done a better job, but they're still lacking on being able to tell the story of the fight. They asked Paul Heyman one time, the owner of ECW, professional wrestling company, they asked him, how do you promote a fight? And he was like, it's simple. You just have to answer who's fighting, why are they fighting, and why should I care? And if you can't answer those three questions, then no one's going to pay for it. And I feel like with the ESPN platform, the $1 billion investment, and the fact that they can be in your face, ESPN covers every sport. So they can reach so many different demographics by being able to tell the story of who's fighting, why, and why should they care. So with that said, I'm excited. I hope this revitalizes the UFC, which has had their lowest year so far.
It's been rough, right? And I want to ask you something, Jesse. We've been harping on the UFC pretty consistently for not creating stars, for misbooking guys that we think could be really big players for years and years to come. We're going to talk about something like that a little bit later, actually. Does this kind of invalidate that? They just signed a $1.5 billion deal. Is this kind of just, hey, everything up to this point has been a good decision because we got the money?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that the UFC is a brand. It's the name UFC means a lot. Let's not forget that it used to have old owners, and it was bare knuckle fighting, and it's basically the genesis of American mixed martial arts. So being able to have that name behind you and being able to invest in that name is something that I feel like Dana White and Fertitta saw that value. You have this new management company that's seeing that value, and you see ESPN. It's crossed over to the point where it's now mainstream, and your average person knows what UFC is. I remember there was a time when I would say UFC, and people would think I was talking about USC, the football team, and
or they would think you were weird, right? It used to be a really weird thing to be into this violent blood sport. You may as well tell people like, oh yeah, I really like sword fighting. You know what? I love sword fighting.
I always remember the first time I worked a corporate job. I was an intern and was really excited about seeing some Randy Couture fight. And someone said, "What are you doing this weekend?" I was excited. I was like, I'm going to a fight party. There's going to be, kind of explained, who was fighting and what was going on. And I literally saw people like grossed out. Like I could see like their stomachs were looking at me like, you're going to do what? That doesn't necessarily happen anymore. Now that we've had crossover stars like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, and Brock Lesnar.
Excuse me, sir. I will not be a part of this fight party. I am going to a fine party where we are going to watch a guy fuck a horse. Real adult entertainment, sir. That is not the only streaming service coming to the fight world, Jesse. We also have maybe the worst named streaming service I've ever seen. DAZN, the Eddie Hearn service, DAZN. Can you tell me a little bit about DAZN?
It's coming on the heels of the ESPN deal, and I mean, they think it's fantastic. They think that it's being able to create another sporting streaming platform. They're like competition, it creates innovation. So being able to do this at the same time ESPN is doing this gives the fans options. This is a $1 billion deal that Matchroom has received to get 16 fights in 1 year. That creates a lot of power for Matchroom Sports here in the United States. What they want to do is they have to do 12 good fights for blockbuster events. And
so when you say fights, you mean fight cards, right, Jesse?
What was that?
When you say fights, you mean fight cards or just 16 fights?
16 fight cards.
Yeah.
But, I mean, more importantly, is boxing's a little bit more main event heavy. So, of course, they're going to try to do build-up fights, and then they're eventually going to lead up to this big main event. So I don't think they'll do stack cards. I think they're going to do more they're going to tell the story over time kind of cards. But they're going to have big blockbuster events at the very top.
I can't wait. I can't wait for this hero's journey from Eddie Hearn and the boys.
And Eddie Hearn kind of discussed this a bit. He said that the reason he decided to go ahead and do this with this streaming service is the fact that Top Rank has kind of revitalized itself through the ESPN platform. And then you have PBC that's done great work over there with Showtime, and then HBO is working with everyone. And, he talked about the flaws of the PBC model of you have all this investing, you have all these investors, you have money, you have fighters, you have a great stable, but you don't have TV dates. So you're paying to be able to show your product, and, that's even a maybe if you can even get the product out there. So he said the most important thing is to have dates, and being able to have 16 guaranteed dates puts him in a very good position to, build a stable, create something big, and create huge events.
Do you think this is a sustainable over-the-top streaming service? Do you think DAZN is going to end up becoming the Netflix of fights, especially when they have something like the ESPN Plus situation going on? Is this just bad timing?
You know what? This is one of those where, like, the ESPN Plus app, it goes hand in hand with the UFC. It's a brand. It's been known for a long time. You could talk to anyone in any bar, and they know what ESPN is. ESPN is probably on in every bar.
Yeah.
But DAZN, that's gonna be a hero's journey. Like you said, it's gonna be an uphill battle.
Man, I would be very surprised if it ends up succeeding, and I think it's something that especially boxing has done a great job of over the years. I think Eddie Hearn just found some billionaire to invest in this company, and I think he's going to bleed the investment dry for all it's worth. And when that investment is done, we go and we find somebody else. And I feel like sports like ESPN, sports like the UFC and sports like boxing have always kind of done that. They've always kind of found these wealthy benefactors to kind of help them to the next step. And I feel like this might be another situation of that. I don't think DAZN is going to be the answer to boxing's quote-unquote Netflix.
Well, I believe that the reason why they're doing this kind of helps out the fans a bit, because I feel like the Wilder and Joshua fight will be next, and it will be in DAZN. I think that's how they're going to get their early subscribers.
It'll be in DAZN, and it'll be an enormous fight, one of the biggest fights that we've had in the last however many years. Pick a number. But where will that fight happen, Jesse?
That's the big debate. Joshua has said that, he will take a pay cut to have the fight in the UK because he feels the UK fans deserve it. What's your take on it?
Well, it's not just that the UK fans deserve it. He's also calling out the American system, saying he doesn't expect fair treatment in the United States, in Vegas. And I can see that there is precedent for that, but there's not precedent for that with Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder has never been that lead guy, and Anthony Joshua would be the A side in this fight, in my mind, not Deontay Wilder. Even if it took place in Vegas. Maybe if it took place in, like, New York or somewhere outside of Vegas. But I really see Vegas as such neutral territory unless you're one of a handful of guys. So I feel like this is Anthony Joshua trying to get a leg up and trying to get an advantage on Deontay, which more power to him. He's in the fight game. But
what I heard is a little bit of patriotism because they say that UK doesn't get big sporting events. Ooh. So they feel like they deserve this one.
They get, like, soccer and shit. They care about soccer. They just don't... Yeah, they don't get the Super Bowl. What the fuck do you want? Of course not.
So, speaking of Super Bowl, I've said this before. This weekend was the Cinco de Mayo, which is the Super Bowl of boxing that I was expecting, but on May 19th. And we had phenomenal fights. Starting at the very top, we had a light heavyweight clash between Badou Jack and Adonis Stevenson. How did you view this fight?
How did I view it, or how did I score it? I thought it was a fight where I thought Adonis Stevenson did enough to earn the draw, and I feel like we saw Adonis Stevenson's last great gasp, honestly. And maybe there's a little bit of bias, but it's just one of those situations where you see an aging lion and you're just kind of waiting for somebody to come up and nudge him off the hill. I feel like Badou Jack had that opportunity, and I feel like if he had started a little earlier in the fight, then he would have been able to capitalize on it. But ultimately, Badou Jack, just a slow starter and not willing to really get in there and mix it up early, and he gave away a lot of rounds that he didn't have to. And Badou Jack comes away with a draw, and I think it's a very well-deserved draw. I did score it as a 6-6 draw.
I completely agree. I think that Badou Jack was too cautious early on, and even though he looked sensational, the rounds he won, he looked the most impressive. But numbers, it doesn't matter if you win a round by a big margin, unless you get a knockdown or you get a complete 10-8 round, or if you win it by a small margin, it's still 10-9. And who won the fight? Badou Jack won the fight.
Badou Jack won the fight. Yeah, Pride rules, we give the belt to Badou Jack. But it's not Pride rules.
Who won the sporting event? It was a draw.
And the Adonis Stevenson can't get rid of the fucking, the horseshoe that he has stuck up his ass. He's one of the luckiest champions in history. I understand that he works hard and he's skilled and whatever. Adonis Stevenson has been on the right side of so many fortuitous events in his career. It's unbelievable.
This is the fourth draw that Badou Jack has had in 5 years.
Jesus Christ. It's because he's a slow starter. It really is. He doesn't start until round 7. And when he starts, he's unbelievable. But it takes him a while to get there. This is also the third draw he's had in his last 4 fights. Okay, so I guess because he's increased his level, I guess you would say he's fighting tougher guys. So they are figuring out how to fight him. They know they need to start early because he's not going to, and they can pick up a lot of rounds. People are coming out with the same game plan against Badou Jack every time. He has to be able to adjust to this at some point, or he's just never going to be that guy. He's always just going to be a guy in the division. He's never going to lead the division in that way. I thought going up in weight would help. I thought it might have been, a weight cut, cardio, nutrition issue. It's not. It's just him. It's just who he is. Very disappointing.
You know what? They talked about a rematch, but the WBC has been open. And they said that they haven't enforced the mandatory for Adonis Stevenson since Tony Bellew back in 2013, and they are actually enforcing him to fight the interim WBC champion Alexander Vozik. So I think it's going to be I think that's the fight that he's going to lose the title to, because if that fight happens, he either gets stripped from the belt if he doesn't take the fight, or he defends the title against Vozik. And I mean, like you said, I think we've seen the best of Adonis Stevenson, but we still haven't seen the best of Vozik. He looks amazing. For those who haven't seen him, he's like a light heavyweight version of Lomachenko. And I'm not just saying that because they're from the same country, because they're both Ukrainian. It's because he has phenomenal footwork. He hits you from different angles. He's a very busy guy. And, you know, he's also one of these Eastern European guys who's like less than 20 fights, but already has the skill to be world champion.
Listen to these rankings. Stop me when you hear a name that you think Adonis Stevenson could beat, that you would give him a reasonable shot at winning this fight. Sergey Kovalev, Dmitry Bivol, Alexander Vazik, Artur Beterbiev, Sullivan Barrera, Alida Alvarez, Joe Smith Jr., Marcus Brown. Anyone in there?
Maybe Joe Smith Jr. That would be bombs away. It would be whoever gets the knockout first.
Yeah, maybe, right? Yeah, but you're going to have to walk into a goddamn firefight, and I don't think he can do it. Although I will say Adonis Stevenson had a knockdown, I think it was in the 10th or something, that's absolutely saved his belt. 100%. The tide was really starting to turn. I think it was, it was a body shot. I think it was a straight left to the body that backed up Badou Jack right when the momentum was really starting to come on strong. And if he didn't land that shot, his belt would be toast. Vazik's I expect him to run through Adonis Stevenson.
You know, it would be crazy. What if Adonis just gives up the belt?
He might. That would be such a heel move. I never lost it. You're not going to beat me. I'll beat me. It's almost like 8 Mile. I'll make fun of myself. I'll roast myself. You don't got shit.
The rest of the weekend was filled of two very similar stories at featherweight. So you have two champions here who haven't been proven champions. I mean, they won the belt against guys who were a little bit at the end of their career. So they were at the right place at the right time to take those titles away. I'm talking about Garrett Russell Jr. and Lee Selby. Selby beat Granovich, and Garrett Russell Jr. beat Johnny Gonzalez in his 7th comeback of his career. So neither guy had really defended the title against anyone great. This was the toughest fight each man was going to have in their current title defense. And it was going to be against 25-year-old undefeated fighters who were taking their first step up in competition. Both of these 25-year-olds had looked fantastic at kind of like the build-up level. So we had questions. Would they be able to perform at the world-class level? And are these champions world-class champions? And we had two very different answers. How did you see the first fight of the evening, Lee Selby versus Josh Warrington?
Lee Selby, Josh Warrington. I thought that Lee Selby looked a little off, but Josh Warrington looked amazing. This kid's now 27-0. He brings a lot of really good skill. He's a very athletic young man. I was really impressed. I haven't had that many chances to get eyes on Warrington, but I was really impressed with how much he was able to shut down Lee Selby.
Was he just very prepared? Was Lee Selby just not who we thought he was? Or was it a mix of, or was it that Josh Warrington is going to be a major player in this division?
I mean, Lee Selby, I've seen a lot of tape on him. He is super duper tough, but he did not look like himself. It was a split decision. It's not like it was a complete blowing out where he got knocked down a million times.
It was a split decision, but that shouldn't have been a split decision.
It shouldn't have been a split decision, but it was a competitive fight.
For Warrington.
It was a competitive fight, though. Lee Selby was not. He didn't forget how to lace up his boots one night. He still knew what was up. But I thought he looked a little slow. I thought he looked very tentative. And Josh Warrington put a lot of great stuff together. I was super impressed by him.
What were your thoughts on Warrington's fans? They're crazy, crazy fans. They were harassing Lee Selby on the drive-in. They almost tipped over. They were getting in front of his car. They were talking shit. They were banging on his windows. It was like they're a bunch of soccer hooligans.
Hey, man, it helped out. I think it might have helped get in the mind of Lee Selby because wherever he was, it was not in that ring. He was not as dialed in as you need to be when you're fighting for a world championship and when you're a 400-point favorite. I mean, come on. So I'll be really interested to see Lee Selby's next fight because that's going to tell me a lot about who he is. He's now 26-2.
The very popular Carl Frampton.
That would be dope. Let's see that. Although, Carl Frampton would really put it on him.
Right? I didn't get the sense that either one of these guys would be the elite in this weight class. I felt like they were fighting at their level, but I felt that the Gary Russell Jr. versus JoJo Diaz was competed at a higher level.
Absolutely, and I really enjoyed that fight. That might have been my fight of the weekend. To put a bow on that, Warrington obviously going to face a tougher test next time, and he's going to need that fight to be in the UK. When I'm looking at these rankings, maybe like a Abner Mares would be cool. He's going to have to be careful in his matchmaking because, yeah, if he gets into like the Oscar Valdez's of the world, the Leo Santa Cruz's of the world, they'll wash him. Gary Russell Jr. would wash him. Gary Russell Jr. looked really good this weekend. He fought JoJo Diaz in a great fight.
Speaking of Oscar Valdez, JoJo Diaz had previously beat Oscar Valdez in the amateurs. And speaking of Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell Jr. beat Leo Santa Cruz in the amateurs. And these guys faced each other this weekend as well. And that was... What was your take on this? What was your take on JoJo Diaz's first step up to the world class? And what was your take on Gary Russell as a world champion?
I actually thought Gary Russell Jr. looked really good. I thought he looked really confident in there. JoJo Diaz, he came in, I thought that he elevated himself in his loss. He fought really well early on, but I think Gary Russell Jr. was able to make a lot of technical adjustments as the fight went on, especially his distancing. He stopped getting in infighting with JoJo. And I think that paid a lot of dividends later on. He's the guy with maybe the fastest hand speed in the world. This guy fought Lomachenko to a majority decision. Gary Russell Jr. is a motherfucker. But he's a motherfucker from distance and with his angles and with his combinations. And he was getting in and infighting with Diaz a ton early. I thought it was a terrible game plan. He made those adjustments later and he ended up really taking over the fight in the second half. But that first half was awesome. And I thought JoJo Diaz did a fantastic job. Very impressed.
Very impressed. I look forward to seeing JoJo Diaz back in the world class. I would love to see JoJo going forward, either fighting Nonito Donaire, Scott Quigg, or even this guy, Jesus Rojas. He's the current interim WBA champion to Leo Santa Cruz. He's got a great record. He's 31 years old, only has one loss in his career. He's been killing it out of Puerto Rico, but I honestly haven't seen him fight anyone, so I'm looking to see him take his first step up to the world class. I think JoJo Diaz would be the right person to do that with, because it's kind of one of those, they'll eliminate each other. Whoever's not real will lose, their spot in the top 10 of this division.
We got one spot and two guys. You guys figure it out. I get it.
Yeah.
So that was all fantastic. Loved it. The UFC did give us. Are you done on the? Do we have anything else on the boxing for the week, Jesse?
Nope.
The UFC did give us a main event. They gave us a card for the first time from Chile, and the main event saw Kamaru Usman push his undefeated UFC streak to 8-0. He is 8-0 in the UFC, the second longest welterweight win streak ever behind Georges St. Pierre. He won a convincing unanimous decision over Demian Maia. It was better than Colby Covington did against Demian Maia in his last fight, and it was better than Tyron Woodley 2 fights ago, which is still one of the most boring fights in UFC history. In this fight, Maia went 0 for 49. Or no, I apologize. In his last 3 fights, Maia is 0 for 49 in takedown attempts. Is this just bad style matchups? Is Demian Maia just getting matched up with better wrestlers? And so we're not getting to see this beautiful jiu-jitsu of his?
Yeah, I think the wrestling is a big issue. Woodley is a great wrestler. Usman's a good wrestler. Covington. And, Demian Maia was a little bit of an old school kind of MMA fighter, a guy who has one really good specialty. And, that's one of those things that, his time is telling. His generation's aging out of this sport. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of him aging out. And, the evolution of the sport is kind of going past Demian Maia.
It's sad, man. I love Demian Maia. I mark out for Demian Maia. But he's had a long and storied UFC career. He's fought for multiple world championships. Everybody loves him. He's a white meat baby face in the UFC. Kamaru Usman, though, this guy's the truth. The Nigerian Nightmare looks like a motherfucker. Something I definitely want to see from him, though, is I want to see a lot more activity with those hands. I think he needs to open up that jab. This whole fight, he landed less than 100 strikes, and they were in there for 25 fucking minutes.
I will say this. I saw this fight, and Kamaru Usman won the fight. Looked impressive to us MMA junkies, but sure. I don't think he sold himself as a star. I also don't believe that people are clamoring to see another Usman fight.
No, which is why for his next fight, I'd love to see him in there against an all-action fighter, the likes of Jorge Masvidal, Robbie Lawler, or whoever wins this weekend.
That'll be good. I'll be interested to see that.
Anything else on the UFC from this weekend? There really wasn't that many big fights in terms of divisional consequence, but there was some fun stuff, especially that undercard was pretty fun.
Yeah, I like the fact that they're reaching out to South America. I think it could be a big platform for them going forward. And
by the way, I think they literally had like one Chilean fighter on the whole card, and it wasn't Ponzinibbio, who is the guy it was supposed to be. It is worth mentioning for this fight, Demian Maia, who is on the wrong side of 40, did take this fight on like 1 month notice, so maybe we shouldn't take everything from this performance, but it's 3 in a row now where he has just been beat up by wrestlers. So I hope Demian Maia figures out something soon. Maybe they could give him a little bit more favorable of a matchup in this division. And actually, here's a fun fight. How about this? How about Demian Maia versus Cowboy Cerrone?
That'll be fun.
That would be fun, right? I'd be into that.
Yeah.
Or whoever wins this weekend, or whoever loses this weekend. I want to launch into this MMA action that's going on this weekend, Jesse. It's a very exciting fight at the 170-pound division from Liverpool, England. Darren Till coming off of a big first-round knockout win over Cowboy Cerrone. Whoever could have seen that coming? Oh, wait, both of us. He is taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Main event, 5 rounds. Jesse, what do you think about this fight?
I think this is a fantastic fight. This is the fight of the weekend. I've already told people. And you know what? I think you do a little bit more of these daytime fights, especially on weekends, like long weekends. When you can do cookouts, you can get drunk and have a good time and watch the fights. I've already told people at 4 p.m. Eastern time, I don't care what's going on. I'm watching this fight. This fight excites me. I'm really happy about this fight. What will happen when Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, one of the greatest strikers in the welterweight division MMA, fights against this new 25-year-old killer who just came out of a huge striking victory over Donald Cowboy Cerrone? People forget that before that Cerrone fight, he was still considered a relevant hardcore striker in the division. And this is one of those where we're getting a 25-year-old who's leaping into the world class. Now, Cowboy, let's say he's a gatekeeper in that division. He's going against the former number 1 contender. And I am super excited about this fight.
Straight
how
up.
do you see this fight?
Darren Till has fantastic forward pressure. I think he brings some of the best forward striking pressure in the 170-pound division worldwide for MMA. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, his movement is legendary. It's like trying to catch smoke. You can't quite do it. Something that really strikes me about this is there is a 10-year age gap in this fight. Darren Till is 25 years old, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 35. And I know we might not have seen him take a lot of damage in the UFC in terms of head strikes, but he's been at this a long time with striking. There is some wear and tear there. Darren Till, huge power, moves forward better than anybody. That left straight that he brings is incredible. The only fight where he's really stumbled was a unanimous draw he had with Nicholas Dalby a couple of years ago. In that fight, he looked tired. He looked a little sucked out. He was struggling from the clinch, and he struggled from bottom. Maybe it was a bad weight cut. Maybe it was, something. But he got pulled into deep water there, and he did not do well. He gave up a lot of rounds. So I think that's definitely something to watch out against somebody as experienced and seasoned as Wonderboy Thompson, who has some of the best wins in welterweight history. It's unbelievable, this guy's resume.
Yeah, his wins have been fantastic. I mean, he beat the current middleweight champion in Robert Whittaker.
Knocked him out, I think. TKO.
He beat Cote when that was the name, when that was a big victory. Jake Ellenberger was a good victory. Johnny Hendricks is a little bit at the end of his career, but that still was a former welterweight champion. Rory McDonald, he sent Rory McDonald back into Bellator and made us kind of question his career for a while, but he's looked fantastic ever since. So that was just a fantastic win for Wonderboy. And then Jorge Masvidal.
The only thing I don't like is he's been pretty inactive lately. Since 2016, he's only fought 1 time. And so hopefully this is him being smart about his body, especially now that he's a little bit more of a name. Jesse, coming into this weekend, do you think Darren Till is going to live up to the hype? We called him to beat Cowboy. Are we going to call him to beat Wonderboy?
I'm calling him to beat Wonderboy. I think this is his time.
Wow.
I think 25 is the beginning of the prime of most fighters between 25 and 27, and I think he's ready for the world class. And I think this is going to be his coming out party.
I want to agree with you so bad, but I'm going to roll with Wonderboy this weekend. I think that his movement is going to be a little too much for Darren Till. I think the way that he mixes in his punches and his kicks together, I feel like Darren Till, when he is mixing his punches with his kicks, he throws his punches to set up his kicks, or he throws a kick to set up a punch. Wonderboy, I feel like they're so interchangeable. I feel like he's using everything together at all times, and I think he's a little bit more polished, and I don't think Darren Till has enough to really threaten Wonderboy with any kind of change of the game. He's not going to be able to take him down and start working there. So I'm going to pick Wonderboy Thompson in this fight. By the way, 35 years old. You're not fucking Wonderboy anymore. You're Wonder Man, Stephen Thompson. I'm done saying Wonderboy. It's Wonder Man. We have one more fight. It's actually happening Thursday night. Bellator 200 middleweight championship fight. Gegard Mousasi is going to fight Rafael Carvalho for the middleweight championship. I know that this is a little bit deeper of a cut, but this is going to be a really good fight. I'm really excited to see this. Carvalho has held down the middleweight division in Bellator. He's 15-1, lost his debut fight, and he's won 15 in a row ever since. Amazing KO ability. He knocked out Melvin Manhoef. Enough said. He's taking on Gegard Mousasi.
Melvin Manhoef.
Say again?
Everyone knocks out Melvin Manhoef.
Not even. I mean, it's still a good win. Melvin Manhoef is a tough motherfucker. You get in there with him. I'm not doing it. Gegard Mousasi.
You only either get KO'd or you KO him. It's the only options.
Yes, that's why he's the best fighter of all time. I love it. Gegard Mousasi is one of the biggest gets that Bellator has ever gotten from the UFC. He's one of the biggest defections. He's almost like the Lex Luger of the Monday Night War. And he's beaten Vitor Belfort, Chris Weidman, Uriah Hall, Thiago Santos, Dan Henderson, and that's just in the UFC. That's not even going back to his Pride days or his Japanese days. He's 1-0 in Bellator. He beat former champion Alexander Shlemenko, and now he's getting his title shot. Do you think this is the coronation of Gegard Mousasi?
Yes.
I agree with you. Gegard Mousasi.
I think he's a level above, but I would be excited to see Carvalho win, just to kind of validate the fact that Bellator's division has been strong. We've seen in the past with a couple of other fighters that have come over, particularly Ben Henderson, and I think it would do them some good to have Rafael win, but I think this is a Gegard Mousasi fight to win.
Absolutely. Is it going to be a Ben Henderson, or is it going to be like a Ryan Bader? You know what I mean? It's going to go one of those two paths. And I would expect to see Gegard Mousasi. I think he's going to pick up a stoppage win within 10 minutes, is my expectation. If I may, if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm just going to go over some interesting fights that are happening this weekend. I'm not even going to really dive into them. Some UFC fights that are happening this weekend that I think people, especially those hardcore guys, are really going to enjoy. Makwan Amirkhani is taking on Jason Knight. I think that may end up being the most exciting fight this weekend. Elias Teodoro versus Trevor Smith is two of the most high-paced guys in the middleweight division. Dan Kelly and Tom Breeze. Dan Kelly, amazing judo. Tom Breeze, amazing jiu-jitsu. Enough said. Claudio Enrique Silva is taking on Nordin Taleb. I love Nordin Taleb in this division at 170 pounds. And one of the best knockout artists in the world, in the MMA world, Michael Venom Page, is going to fight. Are you excited?
I'm excited. The fight that I think excites me the most is the Jason Knight fight. If Jason Knight fights, I'm watching.
There you go.
He's kind of has that Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward type of kind of vibe where, Mickey Ward, I think he had like 13 losses at one point, but if he was going to fight, ESPN was going to pick it up, and it was going to be a highly rated fight because it was going to be crazy and it was going to be awesome. And I think Jason Knight has that kind of same kind of vein in him, like that same kind of fighter spirit. And I'll watch him fight anybody. And MVP is the highlight reel. That's, whatever he does, it's going to go viral. So you want to tune in for that one as well.
Remember when he almost killed that guy?
Oh yeah.
That was fucked
Twice.
up. That was fucked up. Jesse, take me through the boxing we got this weekend. We got some good boxing this weekend.
We have some fantastic boxing. We have some boxing that has huge implications going forward. And this is the beginning of this ESPN Plus app $4.99 will get you this fight. We'll get you these fights. The first fight, we have Jamie McDonnell versus Naoya Inoue. This is an amazing fight. Inoue is moving up in weight, wants to conquer a third weight class. 25 years old. This is for the WBA bantamweight title, and he's a huge favorite. He's a huge favorite. Jamie McDonnell's a plus 475 in this fight, defending his belt against the Japanese monster. Inoue, 25 years old, 15-0, 5'5" against the 5'10" Jamie McDonnell. This has huge implications going forward because the winner of this goes to the World Boxing Super Series Season 2. I'm excited. How do you see this fight?
First of all, Jamie McDonnell, entirely too tall for 118 pounds. I feel very comfortable in saying. How the fuck are you my height and 118 pounds? I'm going to get an eating disorder over here. How is this even possible? Love Inoue. He's one of my, if I put together a pound for pound list, he's definitely making at least the honorable mentions. I love this guy. I think he has every right to be a huge favorite this weekend. McDonnell, I know him and his height presents a lot of problems. And he is a very skilled fighter. But unless Inoue has some problems moving up in weight, which I don't expect, I think this is his fight to take. I think he is going to snatch this pale, poor British man's soul away from him.
He's got some. This is one thing that gets me. Okay, so he's 32 years old, McDonnell. He's 29, 2-1, and he's got some accomplishments. He's the number 2 ranked person in the weight class. He's a former IBF, European, and Commonwealth champion, and he's a current WBA champion. That's all fine and dandy. Look at his record. Who has he beaten?
Exactly.
The only name that he has beaten, which is a real name, like a real tough fighter, is Kameda, who's, he's a star in Japan. He's part of that, Koki Kameda and his brother, I can't remember his other name, but they had a reality show. There were these 3 brothers who were just dominating boxing. They got to see them grow as amateurs and become outstanding professionals, and the whole nation kind of came behind them, and he dethroned him.
Phrasing, Jesse, came behind them. How rude. You come face to face, looking into each other's eyes. That is how this goes.
So besides beating Kameda, he hasn't beaten anyone. Now let's look at the 25-year-old. He's 15-0. Who's he beaten in those 15 fights? He beat Taguchi, who's a huge star. He just recently lost the ring championship, the IBF and the WBA. He beat him for the Japanese title. This was a fight between these 2 up-and-coming, about to hit the world-class Japanese fighters. He beat him in his 4th fight. He moved up in weight from there, got another world title just a year later, and then he beat Omar Narvaez, who he had dominated the weight class. He had tied Julio Cesar Chavez's record for the most title defenses. He had been the champion for 11 years, and he knocked him out in the 2nd round. So we're seeing a guy who's extremely excelling versus a guy who I feel has a slower paced career, who's a little bit older. I see no reason why Inoue doesn't win this.
Would you say that Inoue has more raw knockout power, or do you think it's just his, is it more Lomachenko-ish where he's putting together really solid combinations that over time are putting people down?
I feel like it's a Lomachenko kind of putting combinations in the right time. His boxing technique's amazing. His footwork is great. His combination punching is great. I think it's more the Lomachenko vein. How do you see it?
I would agree 100%. I'm expecting this weekend that Inoue is going to come in and do what Inoue does. I would be surprised if this thing hits the 6th. I think McDonnell's made a career basically off being 5'10", 118. You know what I mean? Whoever in this division fights somebody this tall. So it's going to take somebody who, right, it's fucking ridiculous. So I feel like of those 29 wins, how many of those are guys that, it takes them 8 rounds to fucking figure out they're fighting this goddamn praying mantis of a man. It's really difficult, but I think Inoue has the technical skill. I think he has the power and the timing to be able to get in and do work on Jamie McDonnell consistently. I'm going to expect him to pick up the knockout win within 6.
I think it's going to be an early night as well. I think Inoue is going to stamp his way into the World Boxing Super Series with this one, and I'm really looking forward to see him in the weight class and see him in that tournament.
It's going to be amazing.
I would actually call him the favorite to win the tournament currently.
Let me see how he does at this weight class before I put the full stamp, but that's a really solid pick.
You know, HBO has done a great job of, ever since Chocolatito Gonzalez, of promoting the junior bantamweight division. They've done an outstanding job. We've gotten to learn a lot of the names in the junior bantamweight division. So, we're all getting familiar now with the story of Sisike Sarungdasai. We've gotten the opportunity to, learn about Carlos Cuadras, Gallo Estrada, and, McWilliams Arroyo. So we now have like a good understanding of, who's in this weight class, how talent rich this weight class is. But there are fighters who exist outside of the HBO kind of stable who are fantastic fighters, and they're signed to different promoters that don't necessarily do business with HBO, like Top Rank. And this weekend on ESPN Plus, we get the opportunity to meet some of these other outstanding fighters in the weight class. It's two champions, the WBA champion, and we also have the IBF champion who will be showcasing their skills. One of them has a very tough fight. The other one is basically just WWE superstars. Here's your next star. Watch him beat some bum. So the first fight, we start off with this is the first battle between two Filipinos for a world title in 93 years. We're talking about Jerwin Ancajas, the second coming, the guy who's been touted as the next great Filipino fighter, versus Jonas Sultan, who has been kind of breaking the mold when it comes to Filipino fighters. He's the first Filipino fighter who's been fighting the other Filipino fighters kind of in a heelish move because it's viewed frowned upon. If you're Filipino, I'm Filipino.
I was going to say, what a great gimmick, though. What a great gimmick.
Yeah, we're supposed to support each other. We're supposed to not overstep each other and just fight the world. That's part of the reason, even in Thailand, they have that with Bokao. He hasn't fought a lot of other Thai fighters because he's dominating the foreign market, and so has some of the other top Thai fighters. Well, Sultan Jonas, he was basically a journeyman up until 2 years ago, and he has just been upsetting and just beating top Filipino talent, and he expects to do the same thing here with Jerwin Ancajas.
I think this is a fantastic fight. I'm really excited that a lot of these... I'm honestly excited that a lot of these old world traditions are kind of starting to fall away. I don't see why Filipinos don't fight each other for a championship battle. I think that's an honor that you're both representing your country at the world level. And I've always thought that was silly when people from the same country, it's not like y'all are from the same camp. Y'all are just from the same country. I'll fight a guy in Wyoming. I don't give a shit. Bring in a guy from Arkansas. I'll fight him right now. I don't give a fuck. Bring down the Jersey boy. So I'm really excited to see this. And Ancajas has been super impressive, especially for a young cat. His win over homeboy Arroyo was fantastic, and they followed it up with a big KO over Jamie Conlon. I've been loving Ancajas' journey. Sultan, I haven't got my eyes on as much because
the Joe Arroyo victory, that was only his 11th fight, and he earned a whopping $3,750 for the fight as a huge underdog.
I bet.
And then the Conlon fight, that's the fight that made him a star. Because, there's not many stars in his weight class, but Jamie Conlon had really kind of captivated the hearts of the people in the UK. He had captivated the hearts of the people in Ireland. And he was becoming a big star in Europe. And with that win, that's when we finally started hearing about Ancajas' name, because he's been good for a while. He beat, we've known he's a top talent since he beat McJoe, but he hasn't been signed to Top Rank and been showcased as a major star until that fight.
So, Jonas Sultan has come forward. Doesn't have the best record, but when you look at the guys he's beaten, he has beaten very serious people, and this is a very skilled young man. Was this just maybe mismanagement early in his career? If we can stereotype fight markets, the Filipino fight management game has never been as strong as some of the others.
I mean, yeah, you had Manny Pacquiao with losses before his big fights. So it's, it kind of must have been toughing it out because he just seemed to have hit a stride in 2016. He lost his last fight in 2016, and then he just hit the ground running. He upset the champion. He upset the Filipino legend, Sonny Boy Jaro, and he upset John Real Casimiro had just become a star after his big rivalry with M. Not Ruin Wrong. He dethroned him. He beat, they fought 2 times, one fight where he kind of got robbed, but most people thought he won. And then he beat the longtime champion of the weight class, and then immediately loses to Sultan. It was, like I said, it's one of those, he's kind of made a name by beating other great Filipino fighters. So I love the gimmick. I'm sure he's a heel in his country, but I mean, he's making his own way.
Hey man, check out that bank account. And by the way, if you guys supported him, he wouldn't have 3 fucking losses to nobodies. How about that?
So who do you think wins this fight?
I have Ancajas in this fight. I like Ancajas to win this fight. I think he's a little bit more polished. I think he has a little bit more momentum behind him. But Jonas Sultan's going to make this a very entertaining fight. And I think these guys are really going to tear it down.
If he wins, I wonder if he'll be just the biggest heel in Filipino boxing, or they'll just turn and be like, all right, he's the man. He's the next guy we're supporting.
You may as well, man. If he beats everybody else, fuck it. It's almost like a Black Panther situation, you know what I mean? Like, well, fuck it. The guy we wanted is gone. Let's take the guy who killed him, I guess.
So here's another one. We have Khalid Yafai, who this is the other champion, the WBA champion, who's being showcased as well. This guy's a huge star over in the UK. We're being introduced to him here in America. He's fighting a guy, David Cameron, who is basically a gatekeeper. He's nothing special, but it's just an opportunity for us to see Yafai, and hopefully we get an Ancajas Yafai unification match. This will be able to rival HBO Sisakit Sarongdesai versus Gallo Estrada rematch, and hopefully we'll get some conversation about having these 2 worlds kind of bridge each other and have one champion, or at least a couple of big fights back and forth. Yafai, great amateur champion. He beat Luis Concepcion for the WBA. He's 28 years old, 23-0. If I could describe his fight style anyway, he's like a miniature, faster James DeGale. He's very much in that kind of like British, speed fighter kind of amateur style.
It's done well for James DeGale. It's a great style. I think this is a really exciting fight. Junior bantamweight in general. Let me just widen the lens here for a second. 115 pounds. They have done a fantastic job of making this division very relevant in the world. This is such a money division for 115 pounds. And it makes me so mad when people say, like, oh, well, Demetrius Johnson's 125 pounds. He could never be a star. Bullshit. We have some amazing, we have some very well-paid 115-pound fighters over here. Check the ratings after this weekend. These guys are going to get some eyeballs on them. Not as much as, an Anthony Joshua would, but people care about these fights. I think that's so impressive. It says a lot about these guys.
I think one of the big things that happened was the fact that Chocolatito Gonzalez moved up to the weight class. He already had hype after 10 years of no one caring about him. And when he moved up to the weight class, HBO saw an opportunity when they saw just the rankings of so many fantastic fighters in the weight class that they thought, hey, let's see what happens when we put them against each other. We come up with a cool name like Superfly, and next thing you know, we know these names.
Yeah, man.
We can pronounce this against the wrong this side.
The best fought the best, and good things happen. Isn't it crazy how that works out? Go figure.
The problem with Johnson is I feel like if he were to move up and then bring that, he'd be the Chocolatito Gonzalez where no one cared for 10 years. If he were to move up and then fight the TJ Dillashaw's, the Cody Garbrandts, and all those like great names in that weight class, we'd get the same kind of feel. But I feel like because his weight class is so empty, he's more kind of like the Guillermo Rigondeaux currently.
Yeah.
He's cleaned out the division. He's way better than everybody else. and we'd like to see him just move up and have like a size disadvantage just to make it a little bit more even on everyone.
You know, recently, and I do want your prediction after this, somebody asked me about, like, we were talking about pro wrestling, and we were talking about heels and faces, good guys and bad guys. And you really only build up a bad guy so they can then make a good guy. You build up a big heel, so eventually the face, the good guy, can come in and beat him and be an even bigger star. Am I right or wrong?
Yes.
The best example I think I've ever seen, and I am including pro wrestling and everything in this, I think the best example of a heel making a face is Chuck Liddell beating Tito Ortiz.
Yes.
Straight up, right? Like, I was looking back, Tito was the biggest heel in the world, and then Chuck beat him, and Chuck was suddenly the biggest, good guy star in the world that everybody loved.
You know what I hated about that was the fact that, okay, Randy Couture beat Chuck Liddell. Randy Couture beat Tito Ortiz. When Tito fought Chuck, they acted like that never happened.
Straight up. Yeah, that was the fight where Randy started, with no time left. Tito dropped on his leg, and Randy started spanking him on the ass.
I was like, did we just forget? Talk about forgot about Dre. We forgot about Couture. But for some reason, just because of the build-up and the anticipation of that fight happening for so many years, people were like, okay, we'll pretend like it's current.
Yeah.
But I felt like that fight might have been a little overcooked at the time. Not as much as Pacquiao versus Mayweather, but I felt like it should have happened a few years earlier.
It was a lot more of a coronation than a competition. Who do you think is going to win this weekend between Khalid and Carmona?
Oh, Khalid definitely's got this fight. This is just a showcase fight. This is just for him to kind of set up a fight with Ancajas to unify.
Straight up. So Jesse, do you have anything else this week?
Nothing else this week. I think we're all good.
Put yourself over.
Follow me on Facebook, Jesse J Rivas, and follow me on on Instagram and Twitter at J Rivas Comedy.
There you go. Follow me on Twitter at BadTweetus. Follow me on Instagram, JustFemGilpin. Follow all the show stuff. Please subscribe to the show. We will be back next week with all that fight goodness here on The Block.